just below the surface of all the ominous and rather terrifying language, the White House released lots and lots of documents that were declassified on its website, but nobody's been able to find any evidence in them that one single vote was actually changed by the foreign powers, most highlighted by Trump, China.
President Trump delivered a primetime address last night in which he accused China of interfering with the 2020 election, which of course he lost to Joe Biden. This big intervention comes from the president with the midterm elections just over 100 days away.
Over a period of years, starting during the 2020 election cycle, the People's Republic of China carried out what is believed to be the largest compromise of election data in history, resulting in China's illicit acquisition of 220 million U.S. voter files. That information includes names, addresses, phone numbers, political party preferences, and other sensitive data that would be needed to register to vote and engage in other nefarious activities, which is exactly what was happening.
Now, the whole speech lasted 25 minutes. It was televised, but several networks, including ABC and NBC, chose not to show it live, prompting the president to suggest that they should lose their broadcast licences for ignoring him. In other news, President Trump will also drop part of his £10 billion defamation lawsuit against the BBC. Claims against the BBC's commercial and production studios will be dropped, but those filed against the broadcaster itself will go ahead. Well, let's now speak with David Charter, Assistant US Editor of The Times. David, welcome.
Good morning, Ayesha, from Washington, D.C.
It's great to have you with us. So, look, what were the main takeaways for you from President Trump's speech last night?
Well, it's incredible that an American president normally calls a national address to make a very big announcement or a very important communication to the American people. The last one was in April to explain why America was going to war with Iran, which Trump said then would be over very quickly. This time, it was really to do with his obsession with election fraud and to make it sound like the 2026 midterms in November are in danger. But just below the surface of all the ominous and rather terrifying language, the White House released lots and lots of documents that were declassified on its website, but nobody's been able to find any evidence in them that one single vote was actually changed by the foreign powers, most highlighted by Trump, China. That was supposed to have gathered all the intelligence on American voters and to be a risk to the system. In fact, that clip you played, he said that China had obtained 220 million voting records, when in fact only 162 million Americans are registered to vote. So it was a bit of a head scratcher. And when you look at the documents, there's quite a lot of redactions in there. And the bottom line, I suppose, is that he and his team have had 18 months to rummage around among all the information available to an American administration and still haven't been able to back up any of his claims that the 2020 election was rigged.
And why is he reigniting this row? Because, you know, that was a very contentious time for him as well, particularly with the insurrection that happened afterwards. What's his thinking behind this, David?
So the immediate reason is that he wants a bill to pass called the Save America Act, which really tightens up voting laws in America to the extent where Democrats say, and independent analysts say, it will deter and even effectively disenfranchise quite a few Americans, because they would have to produce proof of their citizenship, so a birth certificate or a naturalization document, and photo ID with their name when they come to vote, which a lot of Americans, especially those who've been married and changed their names, or divorced and changing them back, may struggle to do. And there have been quite a lot of people highlighted in the media who would be excluded from voting if the changes that are as stipulated in that very strict act come into force. And the US Senate is onto this, and they can't get a majority in the Senate, where Republicans have a 53 to 47 majority, but to pass a non-spending bill, you need 60 votes. So he needs 7 Democrats effectively to pass it, and he can't. And he's trying to get Republicans to find a way to force it through, but basically to get around decades worth of precedent of not passing financial bills with simple majorities, which of course will change the way that the Senate works, and will, at least both sides, I think, are reluctant to do this because it will give a simple majority just the way to force through all the measures that they want to in the future. So that's the immediate reason. But of course, Democrats are very quick to point out last night that Trump is trying to infer that elections are deeply unsafe in America, beginning the process perhaps of casting doubt on the 2026 midterms should he lose, because that's the Trump playbook. We know that when he loses, he calls into question the process rather than the will of the voters.
And let's briefly touch on this BBC lawsuit. Just remind us why Donald Trump was so cross about this, and and where things are with this lawsuit.
This is a panorama program that was broadcast just a week before the American election, where they spliced together parts of his January the 6th speech to make it sound even more hair-raising than it was, by putting a section at the end of the speech together with a section at the beginning to make it sound like a direct call for violent action, which he says he did not make. And there was plenty in the speech calling on his people to stay peaceful, etc., in between the two sections that were spliced together by the BBC without any indication that this was an edit. So the BBC has admitted it was a bad edit and they shouldn't have done it. What's at issue in the case is Donald Trump is suing the BBC for $10 billion. Again, this is straight out of his playbook against the media. He throws everything at broadcasters. He's done it with several American broadcasters. But what he needs to claim is that he was damaged to that extent because BBC have admitted fault. So there probably will be some kind of payment. So it's just the level of payment, I think, which is going to be at issue. And he stepped back from some of his claims because he's brought the case in Florida, so he needs to show that people in Florida were aware of this broadcast. And I think what he's been stepping back from is some of the more extravagant claims of just how far-reaching and how influential this broadcast was on the outcome of the election. BBC has asked for proof that it influenced the election, that there are named Florida voters who were influenced, and also has asked for a lot of proof about just how much money did you lose? Why are you claiming $10 billion? And I think the yardstick for this, Ayesha, is that when he sued CBS for a bad edit of Kamala Harris to make her sound more lucid than she was, he sued for $10 billion for CBS, and he eventually settled for an out-of-court payment of $16 million. I think we're in that kind of territory, although it probably would be less for the BBC, because I think the Trump side are struggling to show just that it was really impactful in the American election.
Gosh. So, even if there is some settlement, there's a good chance the BBC will have to cough up quite a substantial amount of money.
I think there's a good chance they'll have to cough up something, but I don't think it'll be as much as CBS. I'm just putting my thumb on the scale here. I'm not an expert involved in the case, but it seems to me as an outsider that the BBC has admitted fault,
right,
but the Trump side is struggling to prove that it was really that
material. Yeah. Well, look, David, really interesting to chat to you, and a very interesting intervention from Donald Trump last night. Thank you very much for your time. That's David Charter, Assistant US Editor of The Times.